I'm going to be taking a look back at some of my first colored pencil portraits and compare them with my current work and talk about what I've learned and what I would do differently. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. My first attempt at a colored pencil portrait was Scarlett Johansson. I did this with polychromos and a white Prismacolor. This is back before I found my love of luminance. I was kind of scared because I'd never done skin in colored pencil before. I'd been drawing animals for years, but never people. And this is one of those pieces that is a bit embarrassing for me still, because the main thing that went wrong, I rushed it. That's on me. I knew better. This was only a couple of years ago. I knew better. I rushed it and it looked terrible. So let's look at some of the big problems with this one. First, my reference photo. I chose a reference photo, or actually it's a screenshot from the movie. Yeah, it wasn't a good one. It was too washed out. I couldn't see the detailing I need. It was just not ideal. And when you're new to doing something like with this, me new to working on people in colored pencil, skin can be hard. So now I've got two things working against me. I have the fact that I'm inexperienced in drawing skin in colored pencil and a bad reference photo. Why not make it easier on yourself? Get a good reference photo when you're starting out with something new. Now, I could probably take the same reference photo and make it look infinitely better. I'm not going to because I don't actually like that photo. But here, being that this is my first time with colored pencil, it was a bad choice to go with this reference photo. But because that skin was completely washed out in the reference photo, she looks like a flat cartoon now because I don't have any dimension in there. Not to mention the fact that she's really peach. I don't know why she's peach. And this is before I started doing the color swatches. And I did it at the end of the video showing you how to draw hair in colored pencil. Card puppet here, you can check that out if you want. But I showed you how I use color swatches now to choose my skin tone, to choose my hair color, to make sure I'm using colors that are fairly accurate. And as I always say, your values are much more important than color, but she's peach. I'm pretty far off here. Yeah, that was bad. So the next big problem on this, I rushed through her hair. I should have spent at least minimum twice as long as what I did here. I knew I was rushing as I did it too. I lost interest halfway through the piece and just didn't care anymore, and it showed in the finished work. I'm glad I finished it because obviously I learned something from this, but my biggest problem here, my pencil was not sharp enough. All of my lines are very fuzzy. Even though I was blending with the odorless mineral spirits, yeah, I get into all the crevices of the paper, but it's fuzzy looking. I didn't go back through and refine things. I also think I was burnishing too early on so that I wasn't able to layer more. I was using too heavy of a hand. But definitely here, if I had taken more time, if I had sharper pencils, that would have made a huge difference. And by sharpened pencils, I don't mean sharp enough to write with, I mean sharp enough to poke somebody's eye out with. There's a big difference. No poking people's eyes out. Side story, when we were kids, my sister and I were watching TV and she says, "Lisa, look," and I look, pencil hits me in the eye. She hit me in the pupil. The doctor was really impressed with her aim, but yeah, I have actually been hit in the eye with a pencil flying across the room. So what would I change? If I were to do this again, well, ideally I wouldn't use the same reference photo, but if I were going to, I'm now 2 years into having drawn portraits. I understand better how to darken up shadows, and I've done enough that I think even with the bad reference photo, I could make this look infinitely better by darkening things up and by using more natural colors, using some of the tans and cream colors here versus pinks and peaches that I used on that one. Plus, again, going back, I would have spent a lot more time on her hair. Now, the one thing I will say for all of these portraits that I did, I had an accurate line drawing. That is so important. So that would have been one more thing I was fighting against. If I did not have an accurate line drawing to start with, take your time, make sure your line drawings are completely perfect before you start shading in colored pencil. Once you start coloring things in, you can't really fix stuff. If you realize one of the eyes is a little too small, a little too far to the left, that is really hard to fix, if not impossible. So make sure you're starting with that accurate drawing. And that is one thing here, I did start with accurate drawings. My next attempt at a portrait in colored pencil was Daenerys from Game of Thrones. Can you tell I'm kind of obsessed? I keep drawing them. This one I did spend longer on, so there was definitely improvement there. My first problem, grainy skin. I was not keeping my pencil sharp enough. Back to those sharpened pencils. That was an issue for me. My pencils were not sharp enough, and I was getting this blotchy, grainy, gritty look on her skin. Now, one of the ways that I have found, or the way that I do skin now, I didn't know then, but what I do now, I make the skin intentionally way darker than it needs to go, and then I will go over it with either a Derwent Drawing Chinese White or a white luminance, lightly go over that, and then I blend that out with the paint thinner. Then I repeat that process as many times as I need to, and I can get the skin very smooth now. And the little bit of blotchiness that shows through, or the bit of graininess, works because it just adds a little bit of texture to the skin, versus here it just looks grainy. I personally do not like my colored pencil work to look like crayon. If people look at it and know that it's colored pencil, I feel like I did something wrong. It's just personal preference. You can work however you want. That's my preference. So learning to get skin to look much more smooth, much more realistic was a big deal for me. And again, sharpening my pencil and working in more light layers would have been one solution. And then now my current way is just to go ahead and make my skin way, way darker than it needs to go, which you will see on the next portrait, and then go over that with the white. Now that works for fair colored skin. If somebody has darker skin, instead of white, I would use one of the luminants, the tans or brown colors. One of those tones will actually work really well. It has to be a very light one, but obviously not white, and you can still smooth it out in a very similar way. But I always do it in the 2 steps. Go way darker than I need, and then a slightly lighter, more opaque color over, and it smooths everything out nicely. Problem number 2, I rush through the hair. Again, I see a pattern forming. It's not a good one. Luckily, this was the last portrait I did where I rushed through hair, but I really should have spent more time. Sharpen those pencils and take the time to make it as accurate as possible. So what would I change on this piece? If I were to do it again, I would slow down. I actually like my reference photo. She's got the side of her face is cast in shadow, so it's really dark. The other side's really light. I like the reference photo. Not so much with my execution of said reference photo. I just needed to slow down. Even her clothing, when I see this one in person, I think it actually looks a little bit better online than it does in person. In person, when I look up close, I can just see so much gritty, grainy edges, the soft edges, because my pencils weren't sharp enough. And I look at that going, well, how did I miss that? How? The next thing I would change is that I started using more luminants. That was a big change in my portraits, adding those to my collection. Some of those more opaque colors, like I was saying, for creating skin, they just work so much better, whether you're drawing pale skin or darker skin. I just love those wax-based pencils for creating the nice smooth skin. So my third attempt at a colored pencil portrait was this little girl in a hat. Photo was taken by my friend. Great photo. So I started with a strong reference photo. That was bonus number 1. Bonus number 2, started sharpening my pencils more and took the time needed to create the hair and make it look accurate. This is when I introduced my first, it was just a handful of luminants, some of the tan and cream colors that work very well for skin tones. I don't remember what they are now, just tan and cream colors. They are helpful. You don't have to have the same exact ones as me, but they're definitely helpful. They clearly made a huge difference. Plus, I slowed way down, and you can see this is where I was talking about. I'll have a video pop up here so you can check that out. But you can see the side of her cheek. I went super, super dark, like scary dark, and then put the light color over it, and it just smoothed everything out nicely, brought everything together. That was a big step in making my portraits look much smoother. Now, I generally try to one-up myself at least a little bit from one piece to the next, and I felt like I did that. I was pretty happy with the progression. I've done a few portraits since and used what I learned, mainly from the little girl, for getting the smooth skin, slowing down, and the more I do, the more I tend to slow down even more and more as I get going. I think I'm spending more time on my portraits, not less. Usually we get faster as we go, but I'm learning how much I need to slow down. So I've gotten to this point now. This is definitely one of my favorites, and all of those things that I learned from the portraits that I'm not so happy with, they were necessary to get me to this point. So when you are drawing and you're looking at it and you don't like it, don't feel discouraged. You have to go through those stages to get to these. But be able to look back and pinpoint what went wrong. That's how I learned. What went wrong? I knew I rushed the hair. I knew my pencils weren't sharp enough. I knew why those, or I figured out what the problem was, like why does my hair look fuzzy? And then came up with a solution. Wow, my pencils weren't very sharp. That'll cause that to happen. To be able to pinpoint the problem and then figure out how to adjust that, how to improve on that, really is so helpful in improving whatever it is that you're doing. And portraits are one of the more difficult things to do. Don't be discouraged if you're not in love with your first few, because I sure as heck wasn't. And I was very experienced with colored pencil at this point, just not so much with portraits. But luckily, I didn't give up. I kept working until I figured out how to make them look like I wanted them to. Thanks for watching. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, art Q&A videos every Thursday, and artist vlogs each weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+. All of those social media sites are linked below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I'll see you guys in a few days.